What does it take to make big girl decisions confidently? This can apply to any area of your life. For the purposes of this video, we are talking about the personal development space, spiritually glowing up, what it takes to transform your life in general, holistically. The first step is to take imperfect action. We don't want to let fear cripple us from taking that first step or continuing on our journey. Seeking or chasing perfection instead of progress, that's exactly what will happen. Taking imperfect action does not mean that we don't have a plan or we don't know the direction that we're going in, but we're giving ourselves the ability to focus our entire energy and potential in one direction. So that means making a choice on exactly what it is that you want to do, who it is that you want to be, and daily taking small, imperfect steps towards that goal. When you're trying to shift your narrative, your energy, the way that you want to show up in life, when you're trying to make a complete 180 from the way that you energetically showed up previously to who you want to be in the future going forward, that's going to require you to constantly evolve and move in the moment. That's not going to look perfect. That's not going to always feel comfortable. And when we're seeking perfection, what happens is we feel guilty and we shame ourselves while we're on that journey. And then what's naturally going to happen inevitably is people who knew us from before will come into our lives, come back into our lives, see us, judge us, whatever it is. And if we're seeking perfection, the way that we respond to those people or the insecurities that come up can actually derail us. The next step is to not try to be right, try to understand. Again, this kind of ties into the not seeking perfection step, because when we're trying to be right, it does come from a place of being afraid of being wrong, right? Sometimes when you meet people who are so extreme in their need to be right about everything, correct, or the one who came up with an idea, or when you share something with them, they have to say that they knew that already. You're not the first person to tell them about this. They need credit for everything. What's happening is those people have a lot of anxiety, they have a lot of fear. It definitely shows up differently for every single person. But it is, at its core, there is a commonality with a lot of people like this, where there is a fear of being wrong, because those feelings that come up when they feel wrong, or when in the past they've been wrong, they can feel stupid, they can feel small, they can feel embarrassed. And so their ability to understand a situation goes out the window. So when we're trying to change our life, when we're trying to change the way that we show up in life, who we are at our core, or the behaviors that we have, that we want them to be more in alignment with who we actually are, our higher selves, that's going to require us sometimes to unpack or leave behind old thinking, old patterns, old behaviors in order to step fully into this new. So when we're trying to be right all the time, when we're holding on to those old narratives, we're saying to ourselves that we're not trusting what's in front of us. We're not trusting our ability to align with something that is better. We're not trusting ourselves. When we have conversations with people that have differing points of views or life experiences and different ways of approaching the truth, our ability to extract what is necessary from those bits of information, hear what other people have to say, and work out what applies to us and what doesn't. That's trusting not only in ourselves, but in something deeper and bigger than ourselves. For me, I call that God. You can call it whatever you need to in order to connect with it. But the point is that even what I'm telling you now is not necessarily right or the only perspective to have, but it could be one in which you take out just a sentence of this entire video and it changes something in your life, or it has a ripple effect. It has a sequence of events that lead to something else. And when we're trying to be grounded from a place of understanding, we're saying that we're open to receiving information. We're open to seeing exactly what is meant for us and how that's going to show up in our life. This allows us to approach life from a place of flow, from a place of energetically being in alignment with whatever it is that is meant for us, especially because sometimes things are not going to present themselves in the way that you believed it would, you expected it to. And this is also why it ties into the first step, because taking those imperfect actions are going to come from a place of trying to understand potentially the next couple of steps. But you're never going to know exactly what those steps are going to be. So when we're coming from a place of being open, from a place of trying to understand something, a problem, or potentially ourselves, why we don't show up the way that we want to, right? No matter how much we say we want to change our mindset, we want to wake up earlier, we want to be more confident, we want to make decisions from a more confident place, and then it doesn't happen. It isn't working out. If you don't try to see yourself more from a holistic, bird's eye, higher perspective, you're going to feel heavy, because the energy that your physical body is in, it could be depression, it could be disappointment, it could be feeling such stagnant energy that you truly believe you're never going to shift or shake these narratives that are currently holding you hostage. But if you just shift to the left or to the right, you can work out that maybe you're not as open with yourself as you thought. Maybe you're not as graceful with yourself as you thought. Maybe when you do make mistakes, you worked out that it actually shuts you down instead of opening you up, because there was an event from your childhood or moments in your life where you did make the wrong decision and it really backfired. But now you're saying to yourself that it is safe. It is okay for us to make those steps. And when you start to do it, instead of being closed, you're open, because you're willing to understand that those were old ways of thinking and you are no longer in that place anymore. My third step in making big girl decisions with confidence is to recognize that rigidity breeds stagnancy. Rigid thinking leads to more rigid emotions, behaviors, and habits that are ultimately crippling us and are very difficult to shift. Change is always happening, and it is required for growth, and it is natural in life. The more fluidity you have in your processes of thinking and behaving, the more flow you have in life. The more you are open to receiving bigger opportunities and recognizing when in your life those moments that didn't feel right or didn't feel good in your body, the lessons that you received from them, even if it didn't feel good. Rigidity shows up in very different ways in our life. It can be in the fact that our parents believed that because they were parents, there were no lessons to learn from their children. So they had a more structured approach of who they were versus who you were as a child. And if you grew up, well, you're going to naturally grow up thinking that that's normal, right? That's okay, that's acceptable. But let's say you were the kind of person that asked questions, but there were no answers, because the answer was because I said. It's just the way that it is. And stop asking those questions. So let's say at one point, even if that didn't make sense to you, you have your own kids. And what will happen is that programming of parents say this, you do that. Because they said is why you do it. And you will actually carry that forward without thinking, because it is natural. But when you decide one day that that's not the way it has to be, and you are no longer going to mindlessly continue on what your parents did, now we're leaving room for something else to come in. We're leaving room for more questions to be answered in a way that we weren't expecting. This is very interesting when you watch how people who grew up in cities interact with life versus people who grew up in, say, I'm going to say the country, because they're so extreme in their differences, right? So for someone who grew up in the city, you're used to maybe the sounds of cars, the sounds of people, the sounds of talking, the sounds of yelling, the sounds of horns. you really have never heard the sound of night and the sound of trees, the sound of birds literally rustling through the leaves at night. You're not used to what it feels like when the town literally sleeps and there is no movement and nobody is talking and your neighbors are so far away that you can hardly see them. That's going to be a completely different reality than someone who grew up in the city. You will speak a different language because the way that you interact with people in your hometown, in your city, in your block is going to be completely different than even someone across the city, across town who grew up in a different neighborhood. Let's say where you grew up, it's also not necessarily segregated by race, but let's say you guys kind of huddle together. So you have more of an idea of what your race does and how people of your race behave. And then when someone of a completely different race comes around, you guys are so structured in what is required of people of that race and what is expected of people of this race, that when you go to a town or a new state or a new country where those rules don't apply, if you think to yourself, that's wrong because I don't do that, that's not what's supposed to happen, that's an example of rigid thinking. That is a very sneaky, small one. But it has a massive impact on your life because who you choose to interact with, what jobs you choose for yourself, what you believe is possible for yourself is going to stem from that first foundation of what you saw and what you believed was acceptable and normal. This is why one of the areas that I find most interesting is personal development. It is the spiritual glow up. It's the inner work that we do as women. And what happens when we do that? What happens when we shift? One example would be when women raise daughters and they're so cute when they're little. And it's so fun to put their hair together and, you know, paint their nails a little bit and put them in a nice little dress, something cute. And then something happens where all of a sudden that little girl becomes, you know, she's budding into a teenager and into her early adult years, but she's not quite an adult yet, right? It's that in-between stage of more of an adolescent. There are mothers who cannot transition with their daughters. There are mothers who it is uncomfortable for them, for their daughter to now have chest, to want to get the attention of their peers, to paint their nails, to dress a certain way, to speak a certain way. And they lock up. They become either jealous of their children, they start to criticize their daughters. They are not embracing them. They're not helping them keep up with the latest trends because it would make them feel better. They're more concerned with the fact that you're doing this behavior to get the attention of a boy, and that is hoish. That is too fast. That's you being fresh. And in reality, if you thought of it from the perspective that your daughter is going to be a woman and she is going to need to learn hygiene, personal care, spiritual health, she is going to need to know how to feel confident in herself. And one of the best ways, and we all know this, is when you look good, you feel good. You're going to have to teach her that now. And if your perspective is that she should have these skill sets so that she can go out into the world with confidence to make better decisions from a place of abundance and security and confidence instead of lack and insecurities, your thinking would change. But that's an example of rigid thinking. And there are a lot of women who had mothers like that. There are a lot of women who had aunts like that. I mean, I've had people try to tell me that my child, because she did certain things, was trying to be grown. And she was like 5. And this is an example of women who have very toxic interactions with themselves. And this is why I want you, even if this is something you experience where people were like this with you, I want you to not think of it from just that one perspective. I'm not saying that it's not correct. I'm telling you, if it's not helping you, it is hindering you and it is preventing you from growing. So instead of thinking of the people who harmed you as people who were just personally against you, I want you to think of it from a perspective where they really did believe that this was right. And they had no wiggle room to shift to the left or to the right to see it differently. And the moment you do this, even if it may feel uncomfortable in your body to do it right now, because you want to hold on to the state of what they did to you and why it wasn't right, this is a superpower that will literally change your life and the trajectory of your life. It will literally help you manifest anything that you desire in life, create a different reality. But you have to get into a mindset of thinking that you want to see things from a different perspective so that you can not only see you, but you can see that person. And you can see how those two interactions, why they were created the way that they were, why those feelings and energy, why it was even present. Because that person will never be able to do that. And when you move, it's like Neo in the Matrix when he starts dodging bullets. That's what happens with these people. If you have the ability to be more flexible in your thinking and they're stuck in rigid thinking, that dialectical thinking is going to allow you to analyze any situation, whether you're in it or not, whether it is emotionally charged or not, and literally be able to extract what you need to and move forward. This is why when you see people, and I've had this in my own life, and people who would do things on purpose in order to cause me to react to a situation. And they would store up things that they believed in the past would piss me off or get me to react a certain way. And this person wanted desperately to literally deliver dog crap to my door and call it a present. And then when I engage, if you understand anything about toxic people, narcissistic people, people who their energy is very stuck, okay? We're using that term, but essentially these are people whose energy is not in flow. And those people, when you don't react the way that they want you to, they either tell you that you've changed, or one of the things that the personal favorite of people in my life would try and tell me that they knew me better than everybody else. So whether this was a partner or these were friends, they wanted to claim ownership over me. I know you better than that person, or why are you hanging out with that person, or I've known you longer, or I don't care who you're with now, like I'll always know you and better, it's foolishness. But you get the point. The idea is that they are losing it. They're working out that you somehow are able to shift past every trick that they have. So they just have to say it how they feel it, which is that I know you better. Better than what? You know yourself? That can never be true. For you, I'm going to tell you right now, that can never be true. Somebody cannot know you better than you know yourself, because you know exactly what you've experienced and how that made you feel, why you shifted the way that you did, who you want to be. Nobody knows that better than you. Even if you tell someone what goal you have and the direction that you're going in, because moment to moment, we're using these new skills of not trying to be right, trying to understand dialectical thinking. We are literally not the same person we were 5 minutes ago. Why? Because we are constantly evolving. So when someone comes in, especially these toxic people, and they're trying to stop you from making these decisions on your own, we need to say to ourselves, we know what's best for us and what we desire for ourselves. I'm going to just do a small tangent here, right? When women say that they love a man more than they love themselves, that is an unhealthy, codependent, toxic connection that you have with another human being, okay? And when we do not do the inner work necessary to unpack why we feel this way about another individual, we are basically saying that we're not ready to fully love ourselves. I'm gonna need you to get a dog, okay? You need to get a puppy. You need to join a damn knitting circle. But the idea that anybody can be more important to you than you is mind-blowing, because at the end of the day, even my own kids will grow up and go off and live their own life. And if I make them my whole entire world, I will cripple them, because when they're ready to shift, I won't want them to, because I have attached my self-worth to their existence to the point where I won't want to see them happy if it means that they're leaving me behind. And there are plenty of mothers who do this. And I'm going to spend some time talking about moms like this, because there are so many people who are impacted by this. And again, this is not gender specific, but my audience is who I'm talking to or desire to speak to are women. But there are men who have mothers like this. And a lot of men don't recognize that that relationship with their mother is so toxic that it will cripple you from having healthy relationships in your life. They choose literally their mother. And that's what they are okay with. The same way that they talk to their mother, or they see their fathers talk to their mother, that's how they talk to their mother. That's the kind of women that they choose. Women who will literally be their mom. And although that sounds wild, and who in their right mind would do that, that's again why we're trying our best to unpack what's in our subconscious mind, because it is literally driving the car. And if you're not aware, you'll be off in the damn bushes trying to figure out what happened, when in reality, it's your rigid thinking. It's the fact that you've never unpacked why you want a partner who does X, Y, and Z for you, but you don't expect or demand the same from yourself. Which leads to my next point, which is that we want to examine our own self-sabotaging behaviors. We all have them. Spoiler alert, we all have them. So when we think to ourselves, no, I don't have that. I'm perfect. I don't ever do anything like that. That's exactly the kind of thing that's going to stop you from moving ahead. When we're allowing ourselves to say that, yes, we do have behaviors that are not necessarily helping us, we're actually giving ourselves grace. We're giving ourselves grace. We're being kind to ourselves. It's a very loving act, and it's a very courageous thing to honor and acknowledge the fact that you may not have it correct. You may not be doing it right. You also want to realize that when we acknowledge that we do have self-sabotaging behaviors, they're going to come from somewhere. So 99.9999% of the time, they are going to come from our childhood, our life, the parents that we were raised by, the environment that we came from, the way that people around us in general thought. Those are things that we're going to pick up. One of the saddest things is when we don't allow ourselves to shift past those things. When we say to ourselves, you know, I want to be that kind of person, right? I want to be this kind of individual, but people of my race don't really do things like that. Or women who are my size don't really do things like that. Or people who talk the way that I do, they don't really get things like that. They don't have a partner like that. They don't make that amount of money. They don't have those kind of jobs. They don't have that level of education. They do. You just don't believe they do, right? We don't know every single person in the world. But I guarantee if you really went out and did a survey of every single person, you would find someone who looks like you and has the desired reality that you want to have. But if you think to yourself it's not possible for you, guess what? You're right. And you won't go out and find or do the things necessary, the behaviors, the thinking that will allow you to align with that desired reality. One of the ways that we can stop the self-sabotaging behaviors, sometimes it can sneak upon us, right? One of the things that I like to do is think about the person that I desire to be. She is very clear in my mind, and how she talks, how she presents herself, who she is, how she shows up, the way that she speaks to people, the way that she engages or interacts with people, and the way she thinks. So when something happens that is very emotionally charged for me, what I do in that moment is I pause and I think to myself, how would this new version of myself, how would she react to this? And why I like doing that is because the version I want to be, and your version should be like this too, is that she is happier, whole, calm, peaceful. She has literally everything already. And how would that version of me think? She wouldn't be that stressed about this situation, or she would approach it from a different perspective. Why? Because her internal core is calmer. It is more aligned. She is happier. She is more grounded. Therefore, these situations probably are not even the biggest thing on her plate. So why would I make it the biggest thing on my plate? Why would I make it so important that it stops me or cripples me? Another thing is the self-talk, right? How you speak to yourself, how you engage with yourself. When you have a thought, are you saying, well, that was stupid, or I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have done that? Or are you aligning with the higher version of yourself that would say, actually, it's not stupid that we thought that, but it definitely isn't helpful. It's not the best way to have said that, but this is one way we can do it. The more you practice this, the more natural it will be. When you first hear it, it might sound a little strange or weird, but I can tell you right now, the people who think like this are calmer in general, right? You're not shifted or disturbed by literally every single thing that happens to you. Why? Because we remember that energy is currency. And I don't have time to be giving all my coins away to the people who get my order wrong when I'm at the drive-thru, right? That's too precious to me to be just giving that away. I'm also not going to be giving it away to people from my past who have an opinion of me if that's going to be 3 coins and I need all of them at the end of the day. You want to think differently about the way that you think. You want to think differently about the way that you approach problems in your life, the way that you speak to yourself, because all of these things are going to be at the core of how, when, and why we move forward or not. And then my last point is that we want to present solutions and not problems. We want to stop complaining about things and we want to start doing. When you're trying to make big girl decisions in your life, especially around personal development, spiritual glow ups, and doing the inner work that aligns you with your higher self, there are going to be a lot of roadblocks along that journey. There are going to be a lot of things that you don't have figured out yet. And if you approach it from the perspective of this sucks, this is a problem, instead of saying to yourself, how can I make this work? How can I say this directly? How can I say this in a way that is aligned with the emotional state I desire to be in? Complaining about the things that you are experiencing is such an addictive, negative energy. There was someone in my life that I just had to drop. Because every time I got on the phone with this person, they were complaining about their life, themselves, the people around them. And sometimes we can confuse this. When we're younger, we think to ourselves, they're just upset about something and I want to be there for them. And that's fine. But there's a difference, right? This specific individual was someone that just had nothing else that they wanted to talk about. It was always negative and it was always complaining about something. When you think about a friend who is like this, that is always talking trash about somebody, they're talking about you too. They're talking trash about you too. And I knew when I was talking to this individual that the things that they were saying other people were saying about me, I knew that they were saying them, right? So when I was telling these people about themselves, I was actually telling this individual about herself as well. Like, girl, it is draining, okay? We can pretend that, oh yeah, I really got one up on her because I told, no. It may be nice for you to feel like, yeah, I'm engaging with these people and they didn't get away with it, but they did though. Because remember, energy is currency, and you took the phone call and you spent a whole hour or plus on the phone talking about bull crap and nothing. And then you turned around and instead of getting the things that you wanted to get done, you didn't have the energy anymore. And what are they doing back there? Nothing, right? They're not doing anything. They're not going anywhere. And this same person every once in a while will call me back up with the same foolishness. And then eventually it's just like, are you going to take responsibility or are you going to give them the control? And I had to just decide, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm just not interested. I genuinely have better things to do with my time. I have a sock drawer that I need to organize. I have air I need to breathe, okay? You need to think the same way. You have more precious things to be doing with your time and your life than worrying about who said what and why they said it. And even when we go through things, I'm not telling you to not sit with those emotions and be angry if that's what you want to be sad if that's what you want to be. You want to take the time to really process those emotions, and then I'm gonna need you to put it in a box, package it up, and send it on its way. Why? Because if you spend too much time in that energy, you're actually saying that that's where you want to be or deserve to be. There are so many times where I dated people that, okay, I'm not gonna say so many times. I've dated people, I don't even like saying dated because it just feels like I've had interactions with people that were very, very insecure. And when you're with someone who is so insecure, whether you're a woman or a man, right? Because again, this is not gender specific, but when you're with someone who, when they first see you, they feel like, man, you're attractive. I really like the way that you look. But then they start to get insecure and they want you to be smaller to the point where they are willing to sabotage you. Okay. Think like we see this all the time. You have, someone who's in college and their partner isn't, and they will literally stall your progress. They will not encourage you to take your classes, to take your exams, to finish, to move to the next level. People do this all the time. Or they won't want to drop you to your classes. They want to constantly see you. They want to start fights with you, things like this. Or they don't encourage you to really put yourself together, to do your hair a certain way, to dress a certain way, to look nicer. They may present it as, well, I just like the way that you looked here, or I just feel like you're spending too much time doing this. But really, they're sabotaging you. They're stopping you. And if you think to yourself, okay, let's say you end up eventually breaking up with that person and you're really angry about the fact that you wasted so much time with this individual. And you end up spending a lot of time complaining about this and being angry about the fact that you gave so much time, energy, money to this individual or this relationship. What's happening is, it's valid, right? Your emotions and what that felt like is valid, but where are you going to go? How are you going to move forward with your life? How are you going to see what's available for you if you don't see it from a different perspective? That person could have been so trash because the next person is going to be so amazing that the contrast was necessary for you to see the difference. That person was so toxic and clingy and irritating because the next time you want to have better boundaries about what you're going to accept or not. You're not even going to look in the direction of people who act like this from the beginning because you now know all of the red flags because you've seen them in action previously. I remember this one time that there was an individual that I had an interaction with, and I just knew them for a long time, and I was moving out of state. I was going to a job that was going to allow me to just leap, right? And that person spent a lot of time trying to sabotage me and stop me from doing things, and they didn't want me to go. But I had already committed and, signed the contracts. I was heading out the door. And they literally told me, I'm going to give you an ultimatum. It's either me or the job. And I was like, bye. Choosing the job. And I just never spoke to that person ever again. And sure, I did look back and I thought about all the times that they sabotaged me and how ridiculous that was, or how many times they tried to, make me feel insecure. Like the weirdest thing is such weirdo energy, trying to nitpick at things about me, or the way I looked, or the way I did my hair, or what perfumes I chose, or the fact that I wore makeup, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And I've had this at different points in my life with both men and women. Okay, friends can be like this too. This is why I always say it's not gender specific. And I could easily sit and wallow in my tears and sadness and just be depressed. Or I could use these lessons, package them up, and give them to you so that you don't spend the same amount of time that I did trying to figure this out. I could take these same things and turn it into something profitable, whether that is truly financially in the physical money sense, or that is energetically. I can use that for my glow up. I can use that for my mental advancement, right? This is why my psychology studies were so dang easy, because I used real life examples things I had really seen in real life, okay? The real narcissistic people I saw in real life became the billboard for my psychological studies. It made it easier. My spiritual advancement, that journey became so much more expansive when I decided to see all of the interconnected pieces, because I do not believe in coincidences. I do believe that people come into your life for a reason, for a specific amount of time, or for a season. The problem is some of us are trying to hold on to these people like they're a damn family heirloom. We're trying to like literally keep them going as if, you know, they're our ancestors and we need to respect the burial process for their existence. We're keeping them too long. Everything in nature has a time. Everything has a cycle. Everything dies, grows, repeats. Everything has something that it does in order to shed the old. I'm gonna need you to pick something too, okay? This is what we're trying to do as well. We're trying to find ways to allow ourselves to move forward without feeling guilty, without feeling stuck, without feeling stagnant. And when we find solutions versus just our problems, or we're not just complaining, it gives us the ability to move forward to empower ourselves. And then our dream life is not just a cute color-coded vision board. It becomes a very lived-in, real experience that we align with energetically, physically, mentally, and financially.